If you could please, I would ask to exit the room quietly, please. We still have business to conduct. Mr. Daly, we're ready when you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Today I'm presenting AB 264 that will harmonize seed transactions under the program. Seed farming, sales, and distribution are highly regulated and governed by the Federal Seed Act and the State Seed Act. All level of transactions and seed products are regulated. Seed must be met standard for germination, purity, label requirements, certified or uncertified, weed-free, and a host of other requirements. The seed laws also have a mandatory dispute resolution element that is implemented by the California Department of Food and Ag. If there are disputes between seed farmers and dealers, because they all operate under the seed law, they go to the seed program and use the alternative dispute resolution services. The program also disputes resolutions. The Market Enforcement Branch program also has dispute resolution process. In fact, over the past 5 years, 0 seed industry disputes have been taken to the Market Enforcement Branch. In addition, California requires seed dealers to be registered as a produce dealer, and they have qualifying transactions regulated by the Market Enforcement Branch at California Department of Food and Ag. It is estimated that a very small percentage of these seed transactions are regulated by this program, but if you do even one of these transactions, you must have the license. So what's happening is we're being duly licensed, and that's what I'm trying to get to. AB 264 will harmonize all seed transactions under the seed law and their alternative dispute resolution processes, eliminating the need for seed dealers to register with the California Department of Food and Ag seed program as a registered producer or broker and follow their rules. I've been working with stakeholders to address some concerns and come up with amendments that everyone can work with, but was unable to get the bill amended in time for this committee deadline. So I've been working with the Farm Bureau. I'm a seed producer. I know this is confusing, but it is essential that we do this because we're being regulated under 2 different branches of the California Food and Ag. I have Dennis Albiani here with me who can expand on it some.
Great.
Thank you, Dennis Albiani, on behalf of the California Seed Association. So I'll try to explain it, although it is very confusing, and that's part of the problem. Seed dealers, farmers, and even consumers are all regulated under the State Seed Act and the Federal Seed Act. Within that act, there is a dispute resolution system. Conversely, at CDFA, there is another dispute resolution program, primarily, in the name implies it, primarily dealing with produce dealers, although it's all farm products and how they define it. So a certain amount of seed transactions fall under that definition of what a farm product is in market enforcement. So the vast majority of all seed transactions are handled, well, all of them are under the seed law, and then most are exempt from market enforcement. But if you do these certain types of transactions, I'd be glad to explain it, then you also have to have a produce dealer's license, and that has an alternative dispute resolution system. Well, as Assemblymember Dolly mentioned, 0 complaints have been brought in the last 5 years to the Market Enforcement Branch. So from the seed entities, many from other farm products, but 0 from the seed. Now, why is that? Well, we're not here to argue that there aren't disputes in the seed business. Well, there likely are. But because they're so heavily regulated, as Mr. Dolly mentioned, purity, certification standards, weed-free, all these requirements, as well as label requirements, and he could pontificate on that for days, on all the requirements have to. Everybody in the seed business knows all sides of that transaction, okay? So if there's a dispute, they go to the alternative dispute resolution system in the seed law. And so that is where we're regulated, that is where we go, that makes sense. Frankly, this came up when, CDFA doing their job, doing very diligent in their pursuit, and we respect that, started contacting, hey, look, you bought from a farmer once that you didn't provide the inputs to, so you need to have a market enforcement branch. The seed dealers go, we don't even know what that is. And there's treble damages and some other things. So when we started investigating, when we found out there were 0 complaints gone to the market enforcement branch, we thought this was a good way to let's harmonize the seeds, the seed transactions, so they're all covered under seed. You use that dispute resolution system, there's no question. Now, as Mr. Dolly brought up forward, there are some amendments that were discussed. So what was brought to our attention in our discussions with both CDFA and Food and the Farm Bureau, and I'll let them speak themselves, but I want to talk about the amendments, which is it was brought forward that there are a few more protections in the program to the farmers that are covered under the Produce Dealers Act, which is Market Enforcement Branch. One of those is a lien. And so they have a lien against the product until it's sold or transferred. And so one of the amendments that we have agreed to and written in, and I think it's generally accepted, is that we would add for those transactions that qualify for the Produce Dealers Act that would be moved in the Seed Act, they would also retain that lien. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is we found there was a discussion that said, look, only financial market enforcement branch only covers financial transactions. So all these other disputes that could occur in the seed law, we said, are mentioned in the seed law. We said, let's add financial disputes to that. So we did that. And finally, we're there on those discussions. I think there's some, again, I'll let the Farm Bureau speak for themselves, but there's some other conversation they'd like to bring in. Our intention is to cover farmers. They understand the seed law. It's to cover seed dealers, so everybody knows the rules. There's one set of rules, and if you have a lien currently, you would still have a lien under the new rules, and that's our goal. Again, I represent both seed farmers and dealers, but we purely respect the concerns of the Farm Bureau and have tried to integrate that. So that's what we're trying to do, and it does get confusing, but we're trying to harmonize so all transactions fall under one governing law with an alternative dispute resolution system. Thank you.
Okay, any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition?
Good afternoon. Noelle Kramers with the California Farm Bureau Federation. This is not an enjoyable position to be in. I work closely with both the author and the sponsors on many issues. The Market Enforcement Branch has been around since 1928. It provides a valuable service to California farmers to allow them to have an agency that can help them if they are not paid what they're owed. They can file a complaint with market enforcement, and market enforcement will help adjudicate that and hopefully get their money back. That's one piece of market enforcement. The other piece of market enforcement is the licensing of buyers. And Mr. Albiani did a good job of explaining the seed program. The seed licenses are licensing sellers. Market enforcement licenses a buyer, and they review your finances prior to giving you that license. So that is a check to make sure that folks in the business do have the finances necessary to pay for the product that they're buying. So I absolutely agree with Mr. Albiani in the point that there have not been any complaints made in the seed industry under market enforcement for the past 5 years. But one could also argue that it's not because market enforcement is unnecessary, but it's because market enforcement has done a good job of licensing and making sure that those in the business are acting properly. We have been working closely with the sponsors and the author, and we have come to agreement on sort of 3 out of our 4 requests. Mr. Albiani laid out the 3 pieces, having finances covered under the seed law in their arbitration system, the authority for CDFA to rescind a license if someone doesn't pay properly, creating that lien. The other piece that we're asking for, and we're think that we're happy to continue these conversations and have faith that we will be able to come to some resolution. But the remaining issue is right now there are some farmers who buy seed, plant the seed, grow it to then sell seed to a seed dealer. There are other farmers who have a seed dealer who comes and gives the seed, and the farmer never owns it. All the farmer is doing is providing multiplication services. So right now under market enforcement, services are not covered. However, if we lose the value that market enforcement provides under reviewing licensing and keeping bad players out of the industry, we would like to see services provided coverage under the seed law. And so we're talking through that issue now. But like I said, I'm comfortable with continuing those conversations, and that ultimately we will be able to come to some resolution.
Move the bill.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Is there any other opposition? Okay. Roll call.
On AB 264, the motion is due pass to appropriations. Perea. Gallagher.
Aye.
Gallagher, aye. Cooper.
Aye.
Cooper, aye. Dodd.
Aye.
Dodd, aye. Eggman. Eggman, aye. Grove. Grove, aye. Irwin. Dally.
Aye.
Dally, aye. Quirk.
Aye.
Quirk, aye. Bill's out.
I respectfully ask for an aye vote. Thanks for the close, Mr. Gallagher.
Dallas, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that, sir.
Dallas, aye.
All right, moving to our next item. Mr. Quirk, you want to present your bill, AB 655? I think I'd ask the clerk right now to open the roll on AB 243.
AB 243, the motion is due pass to environmental safety and toxic materials. Dodd. Aye. Dodd, aye. Salas.
And that bill is out. Assemblyman Quirk.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members. I would first say I'd like to accept the technical amendments that the committee suggested in the analysis. So AB 655 does 2 things. It extends the sunset date for a program called Transporters of Inedible Kitchen Grease. And that program is administered by the California Department of Food and Agriculture. This measure also increases the transporter's minimum enforcement fee from $300 to $350. And I probably don't need to read the rest of this. I respectfully request your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Quirk. Any witnesses in support?
Dennis Albiani on behalf of Pacific Coast Rendering Association and California Grain and Feed Association. I do want to take a minute. There's a few new faces in the audit on the committee, and I do want to mention some of the basics of rendering, and you're going to hear a lot more about this both in the budget and some other things. Rendering is the process of animal tissue into usable byproducts, and so we also, so many people know about that. It has a valuable service as health and safety infrastructure for California, in that it has a kill step in the disease. In other words, we take the product. So if there was a disease pathogen or an issue, we cook it to 280 degrees for 3 minutes and make tallow and other products out of that. So the point with that is that this is a necessary step in animal health and disease prevention as we go forward.
Excuse me, what's tallow?
Tallow is fats, oils, and grease used to make candles, things like that, and biodiesel.
Thank you.
So there we go. See, that's why we're giving the
Tallow, T-A-L-O?
Tallow.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So we use that to make those things like, and they've been doing this since the pharaohs were around, since Egypt. They found rendering materials in pyramids. So we do that. We also, this is one that a lot of people don't know about, this license at CDFA, is the inedible kitchen grease side as well. So the fry grease and the interceptor trap grease gets picked up and used again for biodiesel and other services. So just wanted to give you a little background on what the program covers, because you'll be hearing a little bit about it. And one more, and so the grease also goes to animal feed. It's a very hot animal feed. That's why California Grain and Feed Association cares about this issue as well. So little explanation. Finally, the reason I mentioned the budget, there is discussions ongoing about the cost of the program. It's a self-funded program, as well as some of the expansion and the enforcement fees. So with full disclosure, that is being discussed with the department, the industry, what their needs are, and that amount may be adjusted appropriately. It may be contained in the budget. It might be in this bill adjusted, but we do want to be full disclosure on that. And I think in the analysis they asked if the bill changed. Would you take it back, Mr. Quirk? I won't speak for the Assembly member, but that would be fine as that issue gets finalized on the amount and what's necessary to run the program. So that's what we wanted to articulate. We support.
Next witness. We'll keep the wheels greased here. Keep going.
Mr. Chair, Vice Chair and members, Gary Conover representing Western United Dairymen. We represent about 800 dairy families in California. We are in strong support of this bill to continue the education. I'm glad Mr. Albiani did this. We ship our dead stock to the rendering plant. Our dead stock on ranches, a cow that dies, is not sent into the slaughter plant for human consumption. It's sent to the rendering plant. We need to keep these plants open. Part of this bill, a lot of the bill is financially related, allows them to continue to operate, allows us to ship our dead stock to them so they can process the animal for consumption and non-human purposes and other ways. So we're in strong support of the bill.
Okay, any witnesses in opposition? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the committee. Any comments, questions? The bill's been moved and seconded. Okay, and the motion is going to be do pass. The proposed amendments can't be taken in this committee. They can be taken at the next committee. Roll call.
AB 655 do pass to appropriations. Perea. Gallagher.
Aye.
Gallagher, aye. Cooper.
Aye.
Cooper, aye. Dodd. Dodd, aye. Eggman. Eggman, aye. Grove. Grove, aye. Irwin. Daly.
Aye.
Daly, aye. Quirk.
Aye.
Quirk, aye. Salas. Aye. Salas, aye. Bill's out.
Sorry, I adopted the Gallagher rule. There's no closing.
Oh, when I have all these friends here, why do I need to close?
You said it all, right, Mr. Quirk? Right. All right, next item we have is AB 689, Mr. Dodd.
Mr. Chairman and members, California has enacted a series of provisions concerning the marketing of eggshells to ensure fair business practices and to keep consumers informed. Shell eggs are unpasteurized eggs sold in their shell. The marketing and safety regulations prohibit things like misrepresenting that an egg was produced in California, omitting a sell date from egg containers, using someone else's branding, and storing eggs at correct temperatures. Currently, violations of the shell egg marketing regulations are under-enforced. District attorneys have little incentive to prosecute due to limited resources and lack of expertise. Though the Secretary of Food and Agriculture can choose to levy penalties on her own, this is infrequent, meaning communities are often without recourse.
Move the bill.
Second.
AB 689 is a common sense industry champion measure that will ensure our eggs are safe and California's egg consumers are informed. With me today in support is Dennis Albiani on behalf of the Pacific Egg and Poultry Association and the Association of California Egg Farmers.
Mr. Albiani, apparently you're the designated witness for the Agriculture Committee.
Yes, I need a chair here. Pacific Egg and Poultry Association, California Egg Farmers, both support this bill. Again, it's Dennis Albiani. Wanted to point out in 2010, early 2010, there was a largest recall of eggs in the nation had ever occurred. And what it did, and it was from an Iowa egg farm, and by the way, just for note, the farmer got 6 months in jail earlier this week. The sentence was brought down. So they were not following the proper rules at that time on federal, and there was some fraud, there were some other allegations. So that was good. But what it did to us out here in California, and I think across the country, is it killed egg cells for an extended period of time, and it hurt people. I mean, 11 people died. It was a significant issue. So in July of and I tell that because in July 2013, CDFA, after many years of education and back and forth with both the industry and food science experts and health experts, went through and adopted industry-wide health standards and protocols required for how to raise your eggs, how to raise your chickens, how to handle the eggs. It came from the genesis was a quality assurance program passed in 1994 that California had adopted and led the country on. So by putting those into regulation, we now have, world class and leading the country, as California likes to do, but we're also doing it on health and food safety. So California farmers meet this requirement. Well, those are also stretched out to all eggs sold in California. And we collect an assessment at first port of entry, and that funds a program, an enforcement program. But that's very difficult to do, and we don't know where all the eggs go and where they come from. And frankly, maybe that's not always the important part. But the ag commissioners do, and the locals understand where the eggs are, where they're being sold, how they're being handled, all the requirements, and they know how to enforce the law. But typically, their only powers, as Mr. Dodd mentioned, was to go to the district attorney and try to file criminal charges. And frankly, it might be of an entity that's out of state. So now this gives civil fine authority to the frontline enforcement officers. Those are the county ag commissioners. It does transfer all the due process for civil authorities into the law, so they have to meet all the requirements of notice and posting and those areas. It does give an appeal to the secretary as well. So if you don't like, how you were treated and the process you got at the locals, you can appeal to the secretary, and then obviously appeal through the administrative process. So we've transferred all that in there. We have adequate protections, and so we believe with these cutting-edge health requirements that this is the right way to move in protecting both the consumer and, again, funded by the industry. So we appreciate the time and recommend a support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, any questions or comments from board members, committee members? Mr. Dodd, would you like to close?
Just respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
On AB 689, the motion is due pass to appropriations. Perea. Gallagher.
Aye.
Gallagher, aye. Cooper.
Aye.
Cooper, aye. Dodd.
Aye.
Dodd, aye. Eggman. Eggman, aye. Grove. Grove, aye. Irwin. Irwin, aye. Daly.
Aye.
Daly, aye. Quirk.
Aye.
Quirk, aye. Salas. Salas, aye. Bill's out.
I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Oh, Mr. Cooper.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you.
Mr. Cooper, which item would you be presenting first?
I believe 732.
At your pleasure.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and board members, I'm accepting the committee's amendments, but amendment number 2 may need some further discussion to address issues when the ownership transfer includes a percentage of all cattle. I will work with the sponsors, CDFA, and the committee staff to develop language to address that point. AB 732 would create a brand inspection exemption for cattle being sold when the cattle are not being moved out of state and when the controlling interest of the farm remains the same. Under the current law, when cattle are sold, they must be inspected by the California Department of Food and Agriculture. The inspection includes a fee and is unnecessary cost to families that are just adding minority owners and the cattle are not moving out of state.
Move the bill.
Thank you. AB 732 would reduce costs to families working to maintain their farms and assist the next generation to continue California's successful farming tradition. This bill is sponsored by the California Farm Bureau Federation and the Milk Producers Council. I ask for your aye vote.
Witnesses in support?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. John Moffitt on behalf of the Milk Producers Council. The impetus for this bill actually came from one of our members. It was a family a gentleman who owned a dairy wanted to bring on his son and son-in-law as partners in the dairy. The cows didn't move. The name of the dairy didn't change. Nothing changed. It was a paper ownership change. But that triggered a whole herd reinspection by CDFA, costing thousands upon thousands of dollars. We approached CDFA about that and about that practice moving forward, and they believe that under the law that was what they were required to do. I think we agree that that's what current law requires them to do, and so we appreciate Mr. Cooper bringing this bill forward today to try and remedy that, and we're available to answer any questions you may have.
Noelle Kramers with the California Farm Bureau Federation. We think that this bill will help pass farms on from one generation to the next and still allow brand inspection to occur when it's necessary, because brand inspection is a valuable tool in preventing theft, but should be used in areas where theft is a real risk. We respectfully request an aye vote.
Okay, any other witnesses in support?
Mr. Vice Chair, members, Gary Conover representing Western United Dairymen and very strong support.
Valerie Nera for the California Chamber of Commerce in support.
Okay, any witnesses in opposition? All right, any comments or questions from committee members? Mr. Dolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One concern, or just a question maybe, when the federal government does a buyout program for dairies, which happens occasionally every once in a while, there's an ability to be able to, for different operations, to move the more productive cattle from one operation to another and then leave the coal or not as high producing cattle to the other one and then get them bought out. Is there going to be any way that could be manipulated or without having a brand inspection before those operations go out of business and are subsidized by the federal government? Are you following what I'm asking?
I'm trying to think of an instance I can recall where that's happened here. Generally speaking, if USDA is going to come in and exercise that sort of authority over a herd, CDFA is there with them. And you know, I would anticipate that CDFA and the brand inspectors and the state vet would probably all be a part of that process.
Cool. Thank you.
I can help with that answer a little bit. Gary Conover with Western United Dairymen. In 1986, Congress approved a buyout program to try and reduce herds throughout the nation. Very successful. Reduced herds. Reagan was president then. You recall warehouses were refrigerating cheese. Everybody got free cheese, and that was the reason for the buyout. There was some manipulation of transfer of ownership, but it was a lacking of a federal, congressionally approved restriction. It wasn't in the legislation. We haven't seen that since 1986. And this bill doesn't recognize that activity. It's something completely different. It's a good
Thank
bill.
you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, or as I like to call it, fourth grade. 1986.
Yeah.
Mr. Conover.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Mr. Cooper, you may close.
Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Okay, roll call vote.
AB 732, the motion is due pass to appropriations. Perea, Gallagher.
Aye.
Gallagher, aye. Cooper.
Aye.
Cooper, aye. Dodd. Dodd, aye. Eggman. Eggman, aye. Grove. Irwin.
Aye.
Irwin, aye. Daly. Daly, aye. Quirk.
Aye.
Quirk, aye. Salas.
And that bill is out. Mr. Cooper, your next item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. AB 751. AB 751 would extend the sunset date for the California Department of Food and Agriculture Vertebrate Pest Control Research Program.
Move the bill.
Requestfully ask for your aye vote. Respectfully.
All right, witnesses in support.
Noel Kramers, the California Farm Bureau Federation. The Vertebrate Pest Control Research Advisory Committee provides valuable assistance in gathering the data necessary to continue access to important pest control tools for California farmers.
Taylor Roshan with the Department of Food and Agriculture. We don't have an official position on the bill, but we want to say thank you to Mr. Cooper for bringing this measure. Since its inception, this program has been instrumental in avoiding vertebrate pest issues in the state.
Any witnesses in opposition? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back. Any questions, comments from committee members? Bill's been moved and seconded. Would you like to close, Mr. Cooper?
No, sir.
Okay. Roll call.
On AB 751, the motion is due pass to appropriations. Perea. Gallagher.
Aye.
Cooper.
Aye.
Cooper, aye. Dodd. Dodd, aye. Eggman. Eggman, aye. Grove. Irwin. Irwin, aye. Daly. Daly, aye. Quirk.
Aye.
Quirk, aye. Salas.
And that bill is out.
Salas, aye. That bill is out.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll leave the roll open until Mr. Pereira returns.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Good to see you, man. I miss this exciting committee.
So it's nice that you visit every now and then.
There's a lot of